My world was never meant to be one of light. From the moment I was born in the shadow of dying stars, I was nothing but a tool, a means to an end. My name, Aris, was a whisper of a future I could never touch. They called me Eldra, a slave, bound by chains of fate I had no say in. Raised on a forgotten planet, far from the flourishing civilizations that dotted the universe, I learned to survive by obedience, by servitude. But then came the day when everything changed. I remember the cold metallic scent of the trading post where they auctioned me off. The place was filthy, crowded with voices that echoed like wolves in the night. I stood in the center of it all, shackled, my eyes downcast, afraid to meet the gaze of the buyers who examined me like a commodity. I was different, a rare breed of alien with markings on my skin that shimmered under the artificial lights, a remnant of a time before my kind was hunted and enslaved. Yet in this pit, my uniqueness was nothing more than a curse. I was just another unwanted slave. The crowd's murmurs swirled around me, and my heart sank as the auctioneer called out the bids. Each offer felt like a slap, reminding me that I had no worth beyond what I could give. But it wasn't just the price that stung. It was the fact that I had been left here, abandoned by the stars that had once promised me something greater. Then, through the haze of hopelessness, I saw him. He was unlike anyone else in the crowd. His presence commanded attention, not with grandeur or power, but with quiet determination. He was tall, but not imposing, his dark eyes piercing through the chaos around him. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his gaze, something that made my pulse quicken. He didn't look at me like I was a tool, a possession to be bought and sold. No. He looked at me as if I were a possibility, a chance. He wasn't like the others who saw only the price tag. There was something else, something deep in his stare that spoke of redemption. The auctioneer raised the final call for my sale. My fate was sealed, or so I thought. Then, the unexpected happened. He raised his hand, and the bidding ceased. For a moment, the world stood still. The other buyers exchanged confused glances, some of them shaking their heads in disbelief. But the man remained calm, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'll take her," he said, his voice steady, filled with a conviction I had never heard before. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The auctioneer hesitated, then nodded. "Sold," he announced. That was it. My chains were undone. I had no idea who he was or why he'd chosen me. All I knew was that in that moment, something inside me shifted. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me, not for what I could do, but for who I could become. The man approached, and for the first time, I lifted my eyes to meet his. His gaze was soft, almost tender, but there was a strength in him that made me feel something I hadn't felt in years: hope. And as he reached for my shackles, I realized something. My life, the one I thought was already written in the stars, had just been rewritten. The ride was silent. The hum of the spacecraft was the only sound, a steady drone that somehow felt comforting in its predictability. The stars streaked past us, each one a reminder of the vastness of the universe. Yet in this moment, my world had shrunk to the man sitting across from me. His name was Rael. I had yet to fully understand why he had chosen me, or what I was to him, but I couldn't deny the connection I felt, the strange pull in my chest when our eyes met. His ship was different from any I had seen in my years of servitude. It wasn't just a vessel, it was a sanctuary. The interior was sleek and polished, designed with an elegance I had never known. My eyes wandered around the space, taking in the calming blue lights that flickered softly across the walls, the smooth surfaces, and the faint hum of technology. This place, unlike the prison I had come from, felt alive with possibility. Rael didn't speak much as we journeyed across the galaxy, but I could feel the weight of his presence in the air, like a constant pull. There was a quiet intensity about him, a man who didn't need to speak to command attention. His movements were fluid, precise, and when he finally looked at me, it was as if he was measuring the depth of my soul. "What's your name?" he asked after a long silence, his voice low and steady. My throat tightened. For so long, I had been called Eldra, the name given to me by those who saw me only as a slave. But now, sitting here in this ship, with this man who saw something more in me, I realized I was no longer that person. I had to let go of the name that had bound me to a life of nothingness. My name is Aris, I said quietly, my voice trembling slightly as I spoke it for the first time in years. Rael's eyes softened for a moment, his lips curling into a faint smile. Aris, he repeated, as if testing the weight of the name on his tongue. It felt different coming from him, almost like it held more significance than I had ever given it. Where are you taking me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I had no idea what my future held, or what his intentions were, but a part of me wanted to understand. To a place where you'll be free, he replied, his gaze never leaving mine. His words were simple, but there was a promise in them, a depth that I couldn't ignore. I don't know what you've been through, but I'm not here to make you a servant. You're not my property, Eris. You're something more. More. The ye word echoed in my mind, like a beacon of light in a world I had only known darkness. The chains that had once bound me, both physically and emotionally, seemed to fall away with those words, but still, doubts lingered. What if this was all a mistake? What if I was just another acquisition, another pawn in someone else's game? I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, but Rael didn't seem to notice. His eyes were focused on the controls of the ship, yet there was an energy about him that drew me in, something magnetic, like the pull of the stars themselves. I don't belong in a place like this, I said, almost to myself. I don't belong with you. Rael turned his gaze back to me, his eyes dark and intense. You think I saved you out of some sense of charity, Eris? He asked, his voice low, yet tinged with something fierce. No. I chose you because you have something inside of you, and I won't let anyone or anything take that away from you. I swallowed, unsure of how to respond. The words he spoke were powerful, but I had never known anyone to speak with such conviction. There was no hidden agenda in his voice, no manipulation, just the raw honesty of a man who saw something in me that I had never seen in myself. He stood up, moving towards the ship's small kitchenette, but not before he turned and looked at me one last time. Rest, Eris, he said. We've got a long journey ahead of us. His words hung in the air as I leaned back in my seat, staring out the window. The stars outside were no longer a reminder of my past, but rather the beginning of something new, something unknown. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bound by fate. I was free. At least that's what Rael said. But was it truly possible for someone like me, someone who had lived a life of nothing, to truly be free? I didn't know. But as the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I could start believing that I had a place in this universe after all. The days aboard Rael's ship blurred together, each one a strange mix of fear and hope. I had been free from the chains that once bound me, but freedom felt unfamiliar, like a coat that didn't quite fit. I spent my time trying to adjust to the new life that was unfolding before me, the one that Rael had promised, a life where I wasn't just a slave. But deep inside, a question gnawed at me. Why had he chosen me? Rael's presence was constant, yet he remained an enigma. He was kind but distant. He spoke with purpose, always precise in his words, and I could feel his mind working behind every glance. He never told me much about himself, and though I could tell he trusted me with his silence, I wasn't sure I had earned that trust yet. One evening, after a long stretch of quiet, Rael invited me to the cockpit. Come, he said, his voice soft. I want to show you something. I hesitated, unsure of what this invitation meant. But curiosity pushed me forward, and I walked toward him, my bare feet making soft sounds against the ship's cold floor. When I entered the cockpit, I was struck by the view. The stars, endless and infinite, stretching out before me like an ocean of light. Rael stood beside the controls, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the consoles. He was looking out, at the vast expanse, lost in thought. You ever wonder what's out there? Rael asked, his voice almost a whisper. Beyond the stars, beyond the war and the politics, beyond all of it? I studied him for a moment, trying to understand, the man who had saved me. There was something in his eyes, something deeper than just a desire for exploration. It was a search for meaning, for purpose, something that made him look like he was chasing a dream that could never quite be caught. I've never had the luxury to wonder, I said quietly, my eyes lingering on the stars. I was too busy, surviving. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. I know what that's like, he murmured. I've been there, surviving. It becomes all you know, until it's the only thing you can do. The weight of his words pressed down on me. There was a certain truth in them, a raw honesty that mirrored my own experiences. For years, my life had been a struggle for survival, fleeing from one impossible situation to the next. I had lived by the rules of others, never daring to hope for anything beyond mere existence. Why did you save me? Save? I asked before I could stop myself. The question had been building in my mind for days. Why me? Rael turned to face me fully, his dark eyes steady. There was no hesitation in his gaze, no doubt. Because you're not like them, he said, his voice firm. I could see it the moment I looked at you. You're a survivor, yes, but there's more to you. You've been broken, but not beyond repair. You don't belong in the system that cast you aside. You were meant for something greater. I shook my head, unable to fully comprehend his words. Something greater? I was just a slave, a product of a system that discarded me when I was no longer useful. How could there be something more for me? Don't you see? Rael continued, stepping closer. You're not just a tool to be used. You're not a thing to be sold. You have the power to change your own story. His words sparked something inside me, a flicker of defiance, but I quickly smothered it. It was too dangerous to entertain such thoughts, too risky to believe in something beyond survival. People like me didn't get second chances. People like me didn't get to rewrite their stories. I don't know if I can believe that, I whispered, my voice faltering. I've never had a chance to dream. I was always just surviving. Rael placed a hand on my shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. Then let me help you find that dream, Eris, he said, his tone earnest. You don't have to carry your past with you forever. You're free now. You can choose your own path. I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that he truly saw something in me that I couldn't see myself. But my past was a weight that clung to me, an invisible chain that wouldn't let go. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape. The nagging feeling that Rael was offering me something I wasn't worthy of. As I looked out at the stars again, I felt something shift within me. The darkness that had surrounded my life for so long was slowly beginning to fade, but it wasn't gone. It was a shadow I couldn't outrun. Not yet. Thank you, I said, my voice barely audible but full of emotion. For giving me this chance. Rael didn't respond right away. Instead, he simply looked at me, his eyes filled with an understanding I couldn't explain. After a long moment, he finally spoke. This is just the beginning, Eris. Whatever you decide, wherever you go, I'll be here, and I won't leave you. Those words, simple as they were, sent a wave of warmth through me, something I hadn't felt in years. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this journey than I could ever anticipate. And as much as I longed to believe in the future, the shadows of my past still loomed, waiting for me to face them. The stars outside seemed to burn brighter, but I couldn't help but wonder, what would it cost me to truly be free? Days stretched into weeks, and the ship, Rael's sanctuary, became my world. The endless expanse of stars no longer seemed as distant, but rather a constant companion, a reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. Yet, despite the warmth of Rael's presence and the quiet comfort of our shared journey, something inside me stirred, a restlessness that refused to be ignored. Rael had given me everything I needed to survive in this new world: food, safety, purpose, but he had also given me something far more valuable: a choice. And with that choice came an undeniable truth. The freedom I had been given wasn't without its weight. There were moments when I found myself lost in thought, staring at the stars, or lost in the quiet hum of the ship. In those moments, doubts crept in, shadowing the light that Rael had offered. I had been given a chance at something new, but the scars of my past were not so easily erased. My life had been shaped by a system that saw me as nothing more than a tool. Could I ever truly be free from that? Rael sensed it, of course. He was astute, perceptive in ways I couldn't quite understand. One evening after a quiet meal, he looked at me with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "There's something inside you, Eris," he said softly, his voice steady. "Something you're not facing. I can see it. You're afraid." I stiffened, my mind racing. Afraid? I wasn't afraid. I couldn't afford to be. Fear had no place in a life where survival was everything. But in the depths of his gaze, I saw the truth I had been hiding from. "I'm not afraid," I replied, my voice too sharp. I forced myself to meet his eyes, unwilling to let him see how vulnerable I truly felt. Rael didn't respond. Right away. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate, and walked over to the window where the stars glittered like diamonds in the vast blackness of space. He seemed to be considering something, weighing his words carefully. "You're running from your past," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You think you can leave it behind, but it's still a part of you. It always will be." His words cut through me, sharp and painful. I wanted to deny them, to tell him that I had moved on, that I was no longer the broken slave I once was. But deep inside, I knew he was right. I had spent my entire life running from the weight of my past, but I couldn't outrun it forever. "I don't know how to let go of it," I confessed, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to remain composed. "It's been my life for so long. I don't know who I am without it." Rael turned to face me, his expression softening, his eyes filled with understanding. He walked over to me slowly, as if giving me time to pull away, but I didn't. I stood there, feeling every ounce of my uncertainty and fear crash over me. And yet, despite the storm raging within me, there was something in his gaze, something unwavering, something that made me feel less alone. "You don't have to do it alone," he said, his voice low and steady. "You have a choice now, Eris. A real one. You can choose to carry the weight of your past forever, or you can let it go and step into a new future, a future where you are in control." I shook my head, the words too much to bear. How could I ever let go of the past that had defined me for so long? The scars, the pain, the betrayal, they were all a part of who I was. I couldn't just erase them, no matter how much I wanted to believe I could. "You think I'm ready for that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You think I'm ready to step into a new life when everything I've ever known has been one of survival?" Rael's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, his presence grounding me. "I don't think you have to be ready, Eris. I think you just have to choose. The rest will follow." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that, somewhere deep inside, I had the strength to face my past and step into something new. But the fear, the uncertainty, they held me back like chains. I was free, yes, but freedom came with its own kind of prison, one that was built from the fear of the unknown. I turned away, walking towards the observation window. The stars seemed to mock me, distant and cold. They were beautiful, yes, but they also felt unreachable. Like everything else in my life, they were out of my grasp. Rael's voice interrupted my thoughts, pulling me from my reverie. "You're stronger than you think," he said, his voice firm. "Don't let your past define you, Eris. You have the power to change your own story." I swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Could I really do it? Could I really choose a future where I wasn't bound by the horrors of my past? The silence between us stretched, heavy with possibility. I knew Rael believed, in me. But the question was, did I believe in myself? And as I stood there, staring out into the infinite cosmos, I realized that the hardest part of freedom wasn't leaving the past behind. It was choosing to believe in the future. For the first time, I made a choice. A choice to face the unknown, to take the step into the future that awaited me, even if it terrified me. "I'm ready," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Rael smiled then, the warmth of it reaching into my heart. And for the first time since I had met him, I believed it. I was ready. Ready to face the past, embrace the future, and live a life that was truly mine.